Air New Zealand's Chief Executive Greg Foran can finally focus on the future of the airline. He tells you what's included in his flight plan.
I think we're on the cusp of seeing quite a bit of change. We don't make a big statement about it, but we want to be the world's leading digital airline. I'm prepared to give away some short-term opportunities to ensure that long-term we do the right thing. If you don't make a profit, I can't invest in new planes, I can't invest in new product, I can't fix a digital experience. The objective here is actually to ensure the success of the business. But it's good to be never satisfied, to always be striving to do more.
It's Monday the 13th of November and you're watching Markets with Madison. Greg Foran is one of our highest flying executives. Formerly the boss of Walmart in the United States, Foran returned home to lead Air New Zealand in February 2020. The same week it shut down flights globally because of the pandemic. 3 years in, and he can finally focus on adding value like executives before him, one of which is now our Prime Minister-elect. And investors know the airline desperately needs it. Air New Zealand lost over $1 billion during COVID, causing its valuation to nosedive. Its shares are still priced below $1. At one point in the pandemic, the airline was just weeks away from bankruptcy. It was forced to let go of thousands of staff and go cap in hand to the government, getting a $900 million loan with a tough 9% interest rate. It paid it back quickly after raising $1.2 billion in capital from shareholders last year. Travel has now roared back. Air New Zealand's domestic capacity is back to 94% of pre-COVID levels, and international at 71%. That's evident in its finances. It earned $585 million in the 2023 financial year from more than $6 billion in revenue. But the recovery hasn't been without turbulence. It's been slow to pull aircraft out of hibernation in the desert and has had to hire staff back on higher wages. It's now dealing with potential faults in some of its engines. It expects to book earnings of between 180 and 230 million this half year, but that's depending on its fuel bill, which is incredibly volatile. It's passed most of today's higher costs on to consumers, but been harangued for it. Airfares are up on average between 30 and 35%. Demand is now weakening across the network as people pull back on spending. The economic backdrop is obviously outside of Chief Executive Greg Foran's control. There's been a lot of that during his tenure. But the man who wanted Walmart to win is adamant he can do it here too. Well, Greg, it is good to see you. It's been a while.
It has been.
How are you?
Pretty good. Pretty good. We're tracking along. We're into what I often refer to as the third act in the play. You know, Act 1 was survive COVID. Tick, we've done that. Act 2, enjoy the recovery. That's been and gone. And Act 3, which is likely to be longer than the previous two, is going to be sustain the performance into the headwinds. So we're right into that just at the moment.
I want to ask you to rate your performance, and I'm not going to ask you to give me a 1 to 10, but I want you to give me a domestic route. Do you think that you'd be a dodgy landing into Wellington on a cloudy morning? Would you be a delayed takeoff from Queenstown, clear arrival into Nelson on a sunny day?
No, I would say that we're still suffering a little bit of turbulence as we get back on our feet. So maybe it's Wellington with a zephyr coming in on the nose.
As you mentioned, the airline has very much survived. You've paid back investors, being the government, very nicely. You paid a special dividend to shareholders with your most recent full year result. I guess you're now in a position to actually focus on better serving customers, right? Air New Zealand is absolutely known for being an innovative airline in its history. So what are you excited about? What's on the agenda that's going to improve customer service?
Yeah, plenty of things, and some of them we've recently, announced as recently as, this week. But there's lots of other things that we're doing, and some of them are well publicised. Things like putting in the live flat economy option, the first airline in the world to do that with a Skynest. Other things like retrofitting all the 14 787s. So we hope to get those underway next year. That's a big job. In between that, we've been doing things like improving what we do on board currently. You know, we've upgraded the food and beverage. We've just rolled out, new soft furnishings on the plane. We're currently refreshing the 777 fleet. So there's a whole raft of things that, we can point to and say, gee, the customers are getting something better. We've put in a new app. We've opened a new premium check-in at Auckland Airport. There's also a lot of things that you wouldn't see that we're doing. We're transitioning most of our information now into the cloud. We've rebuilt our supply chain system. We have now what we call a paperless flight deck. So our pilots have iPads, they're connected digitally. They don't have to print off screeds of paper every time they fly. It's all delivered digitally, and they have that with them. We've rolled out a new, what we call flight planning tool, Flight Keys, state of the art, that allows us to better chart where we need to go. There's been work underway with things like sustainability. We're not all that far off from being able to talk about a next-gen aircraft. But in between that, we've been flat out doing what we can with sustainable aviation fuels, with improving the efficiency of how we fly. So it's been a busy 3 and a bit years where, initially a third of your staff go and you're in survival mode. You've got to recapitalise, you've got to go through all that. And then you've got this frantic restart. And frankly, one of the things I've learned is restarting an airline is much harder than shutting one down. So you've got to deal with that. And then there's no point in us sitting here and saying, well, we just want to be back to where we were. We've got to demonstrate to New Zealand Inc., that Air New Zealand is a leading airline and leads the world, not just in great customer service, but actually in better products and better digital capability. So that's what's keeping us very busy at the moment. And I am pleased with the progress we're making. Never satisfied, always more to do. And as I said, I'd rate our performance at the moment as, we've still got areas where we need to pick up, and most of our customers know that. They tell me that. I see it when I get around. But it's good to be never satisfied, to always be striving to do more. That's what we should do.
All of that comes down to improving customer service, right?
Yeah.
And ultimately that leads to a better outcome for investors. They do get a payoff in the long term from an improved customer service. How do you think about that relationship from improving customer service and the eventual payout to investors?
Sure. So, the first thing I think you've got to get right is, as I've mentioned, the culture in the business. So something that I do spend a lot of time and keeping us focused on is making sure that the culture within Air New Zealand is incredibly strong. That, our 12,000 Air New Zealanders want to be here. They feel part of the team. This is their business. They are shareholders within it in whatever form or regard they want to see it. Then I deeply believe in customer obsession. And I'm prepared to give away some short-term opportunities to ensure that long-term we do the right thing.
Can you give me an example?
Yeah, we could probably charge more for domestic fares right now.
How much more do you think you could charge?
Probably 5 or 10% more. And you might say, well, customers would react to that. Remember, we went into the year thinking fuel would be sort of circa $89 a barrel, and I'm currently paying, say, $115 a barrel. Every dollar is another $11 million to $12 million off the bottom line of the business. So, I could stick my hand up now and say, here's a justifiable increase. I've had to deal with some increases from airports, overseas airports, 50% increase in landing fees. We have to suck some of that up. Some of it we pass on.
Most of it's passed on, isn't it, if there's a ratio split?
Well, have a look at our guidance for the half. We just came out with that, Madison, and last year we made $299 million in the half. Great result. You might say $299 million for 6 months. It's a massive profit for Air New Zealand. Let's remember that it costs me not much less than that to buy one 787, and I've got 8 of them coming. So if you don't make a profit, I can't invest in new planes, I can't invest in new product, I can't fix a digital experience. So 299 million is what we made last half. We've come out with guidance this year of 180 million to 230. But included in that is 45 million worth of credits. So do the maths and say to yourself, okay, so you made 299 million last year, take out the credits, you're sort of saying less than 200 million, 190-ish or something or other. Gee. So you're well over 100 million down on last year.
So you think you could actually be more profitable?
Yeah, but the objective here is actually to ensure the success of the business. So, what you've got to do is say, what does the market stand? What is the competition looking like? Where do you want this business to be in 5 years' time or 10 years' time? What's your responsibility to New Zealand Inc.? And, those are the things that we constantly take into account. I've always maintained the 5 stakeholders: our customers, our staff, our suppliers, the communities that we fly to, and our shareholders. And keeping them in sync is important. So it's not just about rewarding one group and not rewarding the others. So, the way that we said, at the end of last year, okay, we did have a great year. Made a real good profit. And so we should, because we'd lost 1.2 billion for the previous 2 years. So we needed to demonstrate to the shareholders, we got your back on this one. So we do the special dividend. And deliberately a special dividend, because it's hard to predict what the next 6 months are going to be like.
We'll tell them it's a one-off, and then if they get another one, that's extra special.
Yeah, and this is an industry that it's sometimes tough to work out what are the conditions that you're going to be flying into. So I think we've managed that actually pretty well. I'm proud of all the team, the way that they've doubled down, we've put our backs into this. It's not perfect, but I travel around the world. I go on plenty of other airlines, and I would say to you, in the majority of cases, I'm very proud of what we do.
I did want to talk to you about the sort of competitive landscape and the value proposition that you think Air New Zealand provides. The airline industry seems to me to be in a bit of either a race to the bottom, massively discounting and budget airlines fighting out for that part of the market, or a race to the top and other airlines fighting for the top of premium and luxury. On that value spectrum, where do you think that Air New Zealand sits currently, and where do you actually want it to sit?
I think Air New Zealand domestically across the Tasman and in the Pacific is actually very well positioned, which is in the middle. Now, a lot of people say, you don't want to sit in the middle. Actually, sitting in the middle is absolutely fine, providing you do a good job of it. We don't have enough people to just be a discounter. And being full service, when you're trying to serve every man, woman and child and pet and bicycle in the country, sitting in the middle is great. So that's why we don't have business class and economy class domestically or across the Tasman. Now, when you're operating full service, and particularly when you're asking people to sleep overnight, which the majority of our planes depart at night, and the majority of them are going for sort of 12 plus hours, go to New York at 17, I think you've got to offer more. So that wide-bodied fleet of ours, the Dreamliners and the 777s, are more of a full-service carrier. It's reasonably unique, isn't it? Delta is sort of one flavour across it all, and United's one flavour across it all, and Ryanair is. We actually have to operate a bit of a dual approach. But that's driven by our geography and scale. And I think that's absolutely fine.
I want to ask about your desire to capture more revenue. And if you look at your revenue per available seat kilometre, the RASK measure, that's down 14% year to date. So where do you see that finding a floor while still offering that value, best value to most people?
Sure. Our biggest competitor domestically is a car. People make a choice generally as to whether they fly or drive. And I hear that firsthand when I'm around the airports. I might be standing in Gisborne and people go, $300 to get down to Wellington, or do I drive? So those are the options for us. And probably in some ways not a lot different than Southwest when they started with their triangle between Dallas, Austin, and San Antonio. So I always have that in the back of my mind, that the easiest way to grow our domestic business is to offer a better value proposition than it is for someone to drive. Always taking as well into account what Jetstar may be doing, or, Chatham's Air or other people. Internationally, to me, it's really about picking what are the markets you think are going to actually be your growth markets, and then going deep into those markets. Generally, you are much better going 5 to 7 to 10 to 14 times a week to one location than going 2 times here or 3 times there or 4 times there.
And what is that market that you see the biggest growth opportunity in, the US?
I think the US is a great market, both ways. I think a lot of Kiwis want to go there, and we're certainly seeing plenty of Americans that want to come here. Very important that we maintain a strong link with Singapore and Singapore Airlines. We don't fly direct to London anymore, but there's a lot of Kiwis who are flying up with us to Singapore and then onward into Europe. Japan continues to be a really good market for us, and that will continue to develop even further post-COVID. So they're the key ones, and obviously Australia and the Pacific Islands are just critical as well.
Customers do have more choice now, though. There's more aggressive competition, especially on those New Zealand to US routes. There's Qantas with their Auckland to New York flight, Delta, United, American Airlines, all in recent weeks. So how does that alter your strategy if that's the market that you want to go biggest and best on, where there's actually more competition in that space?
Yeah. Well, in simple terms, you've got to be better than them.
But why bother, is I guess my question.
Because we think we can be better than them. And I believe that we'll demonstrate over the next few years, particularly as this new product comes on, that it's just better to get on an Air New Zealand plane. Not only is the service better, but the product's better, our prices are competitive. We leave on time, we arrive on time, we don't lose anything in between. And, competition makes you stronger.
Demand is down in some of those areas. One could argue that is because of pricing in this high inflationary environment, but how much of that do you think is actually down to macroeconomic and therefore out of your control? And how much of that demand weakening do you think is actually within your control and can still be improved?
Oh, it's a tough question.
50-50.
It's difficult to put some numbers on this. I think what you're seeing literally by route can vary. I think we've got 28 flights now a week between Auckland and LA. So you would say on that particular route, you're likely to see prices come down, and that is actually what we're seeing just at the moment. We've been tracking some of the competitors' load factors, and they're pretty low. They're going to drop prices in order to get some more people travelling with them. We'll have to react, no doubt.
Should we talk engine issues?
You can.
It seems like it's hard to get good manufacturing of parts of aircraft. This happens more frequently than it probably should. There's been Rolls-Royce issues, if you also count the Boeing 777 MAX issues globally as well. How do you now factor that risk into the cost of doing business? Are you having to think about it more as an airline than you probably would like to?
I think certainly at the moment we do. And look, I'm not an engine expert, but if I had to throw my layman's view on it, maybe what we're seeing at the moment is what happens when you take sort of a technology that's been around for a number of years. The jet engine, I think, was invented in 1942, but fundamentally it's still a jet engine today. But you used to have 4 of these engines on a plane, and now you put 2 on, so I'm guessing the 2 have to do the work of 4, which means they've got to work a lot harder, and they're a lot more efficient, and they spin more, and they get hotter.
This is very technical, Greg.
And, well, I'm not a technical person, Madison, but I'm just applying my layman's thinking to this. So I guess that what that means is that you're working it more, and therefore you're stretching your technology probably about as far as it can go until you can come up with another step change. And, what we're experiencing at the moment with Pratt & Whitney is a situation where we had an engine that we thought we would be able to take off and land 12,000 times before we took it off the wing and put it in a shop. And they've told us, no, you can't do 12,000 takeoffs and landings, you can only do 3. And by the way, there aren't any more garages to send the engines to, so now what you've got is you've got a queue of engines trying to get through these garages so they can check them out and do what they need to do. So you got to live with that. A little bit frustrating, but you're seeing more of that. So what do? Generally, we build in a little bit more contingency.
Does having to deal with issues that crop up like this make you want to drive harder, faster and further into technological change? Because it seems like there hasn't been much breakthroughs in actual aircraft technology for a while. And if there was, we maybe wouldn't have to discuss these things.
I think travel's going to go through a heck of a lot of change in the next 20 years.
You seem excited about that, not fearful.
No, I think it's fantastic. If you think about it, Orville Wright and his brother were flying early 1900s with an internal combustion engine. Frank Whittle in 42 comes up with a jet engine. Isn't it time we had something new? So, a little bit like the way you see electric cars have come on stream. I'm not suggesting the solution is just electric aircraft, but you're seeing space travel occurring in a way that we haven't really seen. We're seeing drones. I think Alphabet, Google have just invested $1 billion in drones. I think you're going to see a lot of drone deliveries. I don't think you'll necessarily see them in Fifth Avenue because I think there'd just be too many going up and down Fifth Avenue, but plenty of parts in New Zealand or America or Australia or whatever where you'll order something online and drone's going to come overhead and it's going to drop it down. And the number one item in the US at the moment delivered by drones, they did about 650,000 deliveries last year, which is not much. It sounds a lot, but it's not much. Was diapers. So I'm just excited about what I see happening, and it doesn't mean that in our particular case here in New Zealand we'll do any of those or all of those or some of them, but it will spur us to think about what we do and how we do it, and that will create change, and that will be exciting. I look at a number of people around the world. I was lucky, wasn't I, to work in the US and work in China and work for some great businesses, and that's provided an entry for me to be able to talk to all kinds of interesting people, and I maintain contact with them all, and they maintain contact with me. And I find that quite energizing because they think about things in interesting ways. Some of them have a real swagger about them that, hey, we're going to make this happen. They're bold, they're brave. I enjoy it.
It seems like, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, so by all means feel free to change them, but it seems like your mark on Air New Zealand, now that you can afford to make one, now that you're in past this thrive point for the organisation, will be technological breakthroughs and advancements in its future and value proposition. If Chris Luxon's was alliances and Rob Fife's was marketing through Grab a Seat, do you think yours will be technological breakthroughs or something else?
Yeah, always hard to put it down to one particular word or phrase, isn't it? But probably digital. And we often talk about that internally in the business. We don't make a big statement about it, but we want to be the world's leading digital airline. We want to exceed in our experiences for our customers and our staff in a very digital way. But I recognise that in any business, the right to do that is first earned by doing the basics brilliantly. And for us, that's about planes leaving on time, arriving on time, and making sure you don't lose anything in between. So you get the right to play in these other things after you've delivered an incredible basic operation brilliantly day after day, week after week, month after month.
And you think there's still more work to be done in that piece?
Absolutely. We refer to it as running the business like a Swiss watch. I've got nothing against Japanese watches, but I like the term Swiss watch, and that's how we want it to operate, on time.
I like it. Greg Foran, thank you so much for your time. Always good to chat.
My pleasure.
When I say the guy has an insane work ethic, Greg works every Saturday and still does some on Sundays. He gets up at 4 a.m. every day, naturally. Do you think that's enough to turn the airline around? Let me know. Now go put your money to work. Thanks for watching Markets with Madison, the New Zealand Herald show for interested investors. If you want to stay up to date with financial markets, click the subscribe button below and you can watch our other episodes here. Stay up to date with all the business news and numbers as they land on nzherald.co.nz.